So it looks like we are live. So I'm with Dr. Jones, and sorry for my English, of course, because it's not it will be a bit hard for me to express myself, because it's my third language, because my first language is Albanian, and I have to swap sometimes the video, and it would be a bit hard for me to express myself, but hopefully with your help we can understand each other, and hopefully if other people watch this, if it will be recorded and everything.
Tell me what your second language is.
Of course, you see, I have some issues with my brain. Sometimes I have lots of thoughts in my mind, and it happens that I forgot. So my second language is Italian, and since I lived just where I was 12 years old in Albania, and then since communism collapsed there in the 90s, we had, of course, to move, like many countries do today that have war, and they have to move to another place. They did the same with us in the 90s. So we had to leave our house, leave our homes and everything, and move here to Italy. It was not intentional. We didn't want to move, of course.
Where do you live in Italy?
In Italy, I live right in Rome, Roma. So can you? I don't know if the recording now it's switching cameras or not. Just a second, I have to, because I don't see the camera switching when you talk. Can you try to say something now?
Yeah, I asked you where you lived in Italy.
Okay, so it does for some reason it doesn't switch the view, or but anyway, I will try to do it manually. The switching, so I don't know why it doesn't do that. Anyway, for me, I see all this. I contacted you because somehow I feel I had always this. I always wanted to understand what happened to me. Why I had to leave my country and came here to Italy when I was little. And at the beginning, of course, you just start and see what everybody does, and you think that it's all normal. And usually when people from poor countries come to so-called rich countries in the West, they lose all their culture and everything. And so I asked myself why I should be ashamed, for example, to say that I'm Albanian, for example, here in Italy, because it's very hard, this thing. As soon as you come here, they put all this pressure on you so that you lose all your culture, all your way of life that you have before, and you just become like dead, like everybody else, just a good nice worker, and so you don't bother anyone, and in fact many Albanians, for example, are afraid to tell other people that they are Albanians, And I don't understand this, because it's not that I see Italians better than us for so many things. I mean, they of course had more money than us, of course, and more material things, but I don't see them so better morally and then in other aspects of life. And I didn't understand why we should be ashamed, and they see us like monsters, because in television and everything they portray Albanians like these monsters, these thieves that only went and did bad things to poor Italians.
Yeah, if you want to understand this, you have to understand the big picture here, and the big picture in Europe and Italy in particular is the loss of faith, loss of Catholic faith. This happened over a period of ever since World War II. It's largely the result of United States imperialism. If you want historical background for Italy, I recommend a film by Federico Fellini called La Dolce Vita.
Yes.
This film came out in 1960, which is the same year that Cardinal Ottaviani called the Second Vatican Council for the Catholic Church. So I think that both Ottaviani and Fellini are reacting to the same problem. And the problem here is America. It's the United States of America and its influence on traditional Italian culture. Had a huge influence. So you have the image of the conflict in the movie between Marcello Mastroianni plays a journalist, and he's got an Italian girlfriend. And the Italian girlfriend looks Italian, and she wants to become his wife, and she wants to cook pasta for him. Because that's what your Italian wife does. She cooks pasta and she creates a home for you. But he's a journalist, and suddenly Anita Ekberg shows up. Anita Ekberg is a Swedish lady. She's a Swedish actress, but she's got blonde hair, and she's really Jane Mansfield. Jane Mansfield was a famous American actress who came to Italy because a lot of Americans came to Italy during this period of time because labor was cheaper in Italy than it was in Hollywood. And Hollywood was in a position where they had to compete with television. And there were two ways they could compete with television. Nudity, okay, having a woman take off her clothes, and huge spectacles, big movies that you couldn't put on a television screen. So movies like Ben-Hur, for example. And so a lot of American influence came over to Italy. And here's Marcello, and he's looking at Anita Ekberg, and he kind of falls in love with Anita Ekberg. But he falls in love with the image of Anita Ekberg, which is the American movie star, the blonde American movie star with large breasts. So Anita Ekberg says at one point, they're saying, the reporters are saying to Anita Ekberg, "How did you get the role, Sylvia?" And she says, she holds up her breast and she says, "Because I have a big talent." So this is what's going on now. In a more serious vein, Cardinal Ottaviani is seeing the same thing going on. Traditional Italian Catholic culture is being corrupted by American imperialism, cultural imperialism. And he wants to do something about it, so he calls the Second Vatican Council. And you can read about this in the documents of Vatican II, the preliminary documents which he wrote or were written under his supervision. And they warn about the American corruption of morals. Now, I just did an article. I just came back from Bavaria. I was in Bavaria in October, and I gave a speech there. I lived in Germany. I speak fluent German. And I went hiking in the mountains, and suddenly I realized Bavaria was subject to the same type of pressure that Italy was, except it was much worse in Bavaria because they were Germans, and the United States wanted to punish the Germans for their role in World War II. They punished them more than they did the Italians, even though they were aligned with the Italians.
Yes.
So
yes.
what this was called, the name of this, the name that you need to know, is social engineering.
Yes. No.
Social engineering means we are going to secretly control your thoughts. It's also called psychological warfare. And it was imposed on Italy. And Italy did not know, the Catholic Church did not know what was going on, because they thought that America was their friend. And why did they think America was their friend? Because America opposed communism. And so anybody who opposed communism naturally had to ally itself with America. So what happened in Italy and in Germany during the period of time that we're talking about? They had a large amount of economic prosperity, especially in Germany. And they lost their sexual morals. Their sexual morals were corrupted. This is precisely what Cardinal Ottaviani was worried about. This is precisely what Fellini is talking about in La Dolce Vita. And this is exactly what happened. The Jewish social engineers, people like from the Frankfurt School, the American Jewish Committee, were appointed to be the controllers of Germany. Every single magazine, every single newspaper, every single film, every single play had to get a license from a Jewish psychiatrist from New York City in order to get published. That was the fact of life in Germany. And these people were determined to destroy the moral fiber of the people they had conquered through the use of sexual liberation. And I wrote a book on that called Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control. Okay?
Yes.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that when the first indication that there's no sexual morality left in your country is that people stop having children. And people stop having children, if it's a powerful economy, they have to bring people in to work for them. And this is much more the case in Germany, but it was the case in both Italy and Germany. The birth rate plummeted. And as a result, the country started to empty out. People were dying out. There's an empty space. The economy stalls. And in Germany, you have to bring people in. Now, in Italy, I'm not sure where they had to bring Albanians in to sweep the streets and do things like that, but I suspect that that's what happened. Yes. So there is going to be this natural resentment against, let's say, with Italy and Albanians. There's going to be a natural resentment against the Albanians because the Italians had to bring them in because they weren't reproducing. So this is an admission of failure on the part of the Italian people that we don't even have the power to reproduce. We don't have the power to have children. We are in a bad state, and we're going to blame the people that we brought in as the source of the problem when we are the source of the problem. That's my analysis of Italian-Albanian relations.
Yes. And first of all, I have put the camera up this way because I was thinking, I feel a little bit like people, in Russia, for example, when there still was communism, they had to put people in isolation, in the gulag, and so since I see much similarities between communism and what we have today, democracy, and I see that this happens also here in Italy, which should be a free country, because as soon as you start to take another path, or for whatever reason you start to see to search for news a little bit deeper than just watching television, you become like a virus, as in the movie Matrix. The agents find you, and usually the agents are not paid by anyone, because it starts from just here in your family, that
Right.
the people that you have around you start to become enemies, and so I'm thinking that of course, this analogy, I feel like I'm in the isolation, when you are in prison, and they put you in isolation, and this is how I feel now. And I don't know if you might know, here in Rome there is a famous prison called Rebibbia, and I live right next to the prison, and sometimes.
One in Trastevere?
What?
Is that in Trastevere?
No, that one is I forgot the name right now, but it's another one which is in Via Tiburtina, and it's where the friend of Berlusconi is still here, Marcello Dell'Utri, the mafia that had mafia connection, and he was friend of Berlusconi, I don't know. Of course, I wanted to talk also of this aspect of the mafia and how important it is here in Italy, because I think the way in communism, for example, it was like the violence that they used to the people. It was overt. Anybody could see that they, grab you and put you to jail, or if you say in the streets, for example, we don't have anything to eat. It was called, like, it was seen as you were attacking the party, and so you could end up or killed or in some prison in the middle of the mountains, and so the people, could see that the system was very violent. But here they made it in a way that people do not understand that the system is also violent, this one, because they have put all the dirty job to some agents that are, for example, the mafia, the banks that come and take your house, the companies, all the business. All the business that today people that make money through business, they usually are helping to forward this what the system wants. So in other words, I'm saying that they are using all kinds of agents to do the same thing that they did in communism. But they say, there's pollution, but, it's not us that are doing, we are fighting for this. For example, here in Rome, it happened a big explosion, which put in the air lots of PM10s, that are very dangerous, toxic stuff, because there was a site here with trash, all kinds of trash, and it burned, and big flames here who expanded in all the city. But when there's all this corruption and everything, you can't blame, for example, the system, because they say, there's this guy that had this company did this, or, for example, if the mafia kills someone, for example, people, for example, don't know that here in Italy we have this coercion that the mafia does to people, especially in the south, where there is what they call here in Italian pizzo, which is like pizza but with the O at the end, which is the mafia goes to someone which has a shop, business, and they say, if you want to live, you have to give me a portion of your profit every month, for example, no? And so in this indirect ways, the state still controls everything like before, and you may think that you have a house, for example, but you have to pay a fee tax every year, even though the house is yours. So in my opinion, if you really analyze the system which says that is free, it isn't true. And going back to what you were saying of this deterioration of morals during these years, I saw this thing that Albanian and Italians were the same morally, but with like 70 years difference. I mean, until communism lasted in Albania, the morals were fine, but here in Italy, the morals started to degrade during the 60s, 50s, 60s, you know, and so many times, for example, I see myself talking to old people and being more in line, and it's more enjoying to talk with them instead of people of my age. I am 37 years old, and so this is I think, and of course, one thing that I was thinking, communism for although it was bad and everything, for some reason it didn't destroy the morals like they do it today. Today it's without limits, that they don't care. They are doing it so bluntly, so rigorously, and so without mercy, that it's so obvious. But at the same time, it's also covert, because people watch what they tell them in television, where, as you say, when you say poor but sexy, you know, they show you that you have only to enjoy yourself, and even though you don't have future, you don't have money, you don't have job, you don't have the possibility to make a family, you have nothing. Things that at least in communism, at least you have. You had a house, even though they decided if they wanted to give it to you. But at least you have a house, you had a future, at least you could make a family, more or less, and then everything. And today it's worse, but people think, in fact, in Albania, people hate, if you talk about communism in Albania, they almost jump at you, and they almost want to kill you, because they have put in their head that today they are much better, and they thank all this capitalism and everything, where everything is so good, But if it really was good, Albanians would return back in their land. But right. They don't do it. We still live. I live in Italy, even though I'm not loved here. Loved. I don't mean people are mean to me, but in some way you feel it, because sometimes for people it's hard, even when you just change home and stay in the same country. It's hard, Right. Imagine when you change a complete culture and everything. It's very traumatic. So I don't know. Sometimes I lose my thought, but I had all these things that I always wanted to talk, but it was hard to even think this thought before. But after I watched, your courage to say things like this, I thought to myself, with more time that passes, that maybe I'm not crazy after all, and maybe the contrary.
No one is allowed to address the situation as it is. The Germans and the Italians both accepted. They accepted the terms of American imperialism. They accepted their status as vassal states to the American empire. And that's one thing, okay, politically, but they accepted the moral corruption that goes along with it. and that leads to feelings of guilt, and the feelings of guilt lead to feelings of resentment, and the focal point for the resentment is the people who come into their country, the immigrants. Now, I'm not trying to say that's a good thing, okay? That especially, I'm not talking so much about Albania now, Albania, Italy. I'm talking about Syria and Libya. The main reason that we have this flood of immigrants from Syria and Libya is America's foreign policy. America created huge numbers, millions of refugees in Syria as a result of their attempt to overthrow the Assad regime.
Yes.
And Hillary Clinton caused the same type of problem, an even worse problem in Libya, because she succeeded in Italy. The Russians prevented the American takeover of Syria, but Hillary Clinton succeeded in destroying the government of Libya. She murdered Gaddafi, and as a result, Libya became the jumping off point for Black Africa. The Black Africans now can walk to Italy, walk to Libya, get on a boat, and then if they make it to Lampedusa or something like that, they're granted asylum in Italy, and then they go to Germany. Now, the cause of this is the American foreign policy, but there are people who are orchestrating this for political purposes, and the main groups that are orchestrating this are the Jewish groups. We've already seen, there's a video of Barbara Lerner Specter that's gone, I don't know how many views it's gotten, but everybody over here knows about it. And she's basically saying that there's no room anymore for mono-ethnic, unified cultures anymore. Mono-ethnic, I think, is the way she refers to it, which means basically that Hungary is for Hungarians and Poland is for Poles, and Albania is for Albanians, and Germany is for Germany, and so on and so forth. That's not going to be tolerated anymore. And so the immigration wave that the United States set off is now being weaponized against the people of Germany, and they feel resentment. And I understand the resentment they feel, but the brunt of the resentment is the people who are the victims to many extent, the Muslims who end up there because of the turmoil that the United States foreign policy has caused in the Middle East. I understand this because I was subject to this myself when I was growing up in Philadelphia. After World War II, the big foundations like the Ford Foundation orchestrated a huge movement of the Black population from places in the South, the southern United States, where these people were involved in agricultural labor, picking cotton and stuff like that, into the big cities of the North. The purpose of this was to destroy Catholic ethnic neighborhoods, which is where I lived as a child. The parish I lived in was an Irish parish. It was in North Philadelphia. And in 1954, the Black people from South Carolina, North Carolina, started buying houses north of Lehigh Avenue in Philadelphia. And that created panic among the Irish, and they all moved out. And that was the end of the Irish ethnic neighborhood. Now, those people in that neighborhood consider themselves Irish, or in other neighborhoods, they consider themselves Italian or Polish. These are the main European ethnic groups. When they were driven out of their neighborhoods, they went to the suburbs, and at that point, they became white. They became white people, which is a way of saying they don't know who they are. They don't know where their roots are anymore. They don't speak Polish anymore. They intermarry, and this caused a crisis in the Catholic faith as well, because the ethnic parish and the ethnic culture, Polish culture, whatever it was the vehicle whereby you transmitted the faith. That was the language that the people still spoke. So the point I'm trying to make here, from your point of view, is that the conflict, as people perceived it during the 50s and 60s, was perceived as Black versus white. Well, I told my friend, lady Cynthia McKinney, that I just met recently. She was a Black congressman from Georgia. She was elected to the Congress of the United States, And she got run out of office because she refused to sign the pledge for AIPAC, which is the Israel lobby in the United States. I said to her, the black people were the first proxy warriors. They were proxy warriors long before the Mujahideen were created in Afghanistan to drive the Russians out of Afghanistan. Okay? They were the first proxy warriors, and the natural inclination is to focus on black people and say, I'm white and you're black, and there's a conflict because you're pushing me out of my neighborhood, and we're going to engage in this kind of struggle. What we need to do is step back from this conflict and say, who's orchestrating this? Who's orchestrating? And now we know, because I wrote the book. The book is called The Slaughter of Cities. We know it was the Ford Foundation. We know it was the WASP elite in the United States that hated the Catholics. So it wasn't a racial conflict. It was a religious conflict. It was basically the Protestants and the Jews declared war, psychological war on the Catholic population to drive them out. That's the type of understanding we need to bring to the situation in Europe now. Okay? I understand the feelings. I was in Berlin. I talked about Berlin as the gay disco. Okay, you mentioned that already. You know, you don't have a job, but you can go to the gay disco and forget about your troubles and dance away all your troubles. That's the social engineering that's going on all across Europe. And Berlin is just a more advanced example of it than, let's say, Rome or other places, even Munich, for example. So you show up there and you're walking through the park and you think, you know, okay, this is where I've always walked through the park. And now I have these African drug dealers who are standing around in the park, and I'm angry at what's going on. And so the natural inclination is to focus your anger on the African drug dealers. Well, I mean, first of all, why are they there? They're there because of Hillary Clinton. They're there because Hillary Clinton destroyed Libya. So let's get real about what's going on here and focus on the source of the problem. First of all, it's Hillary Clinton who created the chaos in Libya that allowed the black people to jump across into Italy and move into Germany. But secondly, it's Jewish groups of the kind that Barbara Lander Specter is talking about, who are orchestrating this migration, which has already happened, for political ends. They are using this to destroy German culture. And the Germans they know that their culture is being destroyed. Whether they know who's responsible for it is another question. That was always the problem in the United States in the 60s. It's still the problem in the United States because you got all these people who were driven out of their neighborhoods, who used to be Polish or Irish or Protestant or Scotch-Irish, and now they've lost all contact with their roots, which is going to happen. What will happen to the Albanians in Italy after a while, and they don't know who they are.
Yes.
And so they decide, well, I must be white because I look in the mirror and I'm not black. So therefore I must be white. And they identify with the commands of their oppressors, and they end up with something like Charlottesville. I'm sure you remember what happened in Charlottesville, right?
Yes, they make this kind. I have a return of my voice. I think you should lower the volume. No, now it's working. Okay. Sometimes Google corrects for it, but it didn't. So I still hear a little bit, but did you do anything different in the volume?
No, I haven't touched anything. I haven't touched a thing.
Okay. So maybe it was something about Google. Now it's working. Okay. So I was thinking how it's possible to fool people in such a stupid way for all these years, and because
what's the answer to that question? The answer to the question is control of information. Control of information. Now
yes,
we live in a world, okay, where I will get censored on Google, YouTube, because I say the word Jew, because that's you're not allowed to say that. Now you can get all kinds of pornography on the internet, but you're not allowed to say the word Jew. That's the type of control of information that I'm talking about. Who controls what is acceptable speech and what is not acceptable speech. That is how you get people to do this, to behave in ways that the oligarchs want you to behave.
Yes, but of course, they spend a lot of money to keep this the things the way they are. But I was thinking, how come people never try even to touch, for example, thinking a little bit different from what they get from the mainstream, for example, media, no? And I think that since I had to study a little bit of about psychology lately, I saw that there are many true, in fact, because I was curious about true of this kind of illness, which was narcissistic personality disorder, something like this, and that other one it's paranoia, when you have delusions, that and everything. But I saw lots of similarities with the way people behave, normal so-called people behave today. And they think highly of themselves, and they, although being completely ignorant, but they think you are the ignorant when you point out things, and they are so delusional that there is no way, even if you show them a picture, for example, of something that is objectively the way it really is, they will never accept it. And I think there is a reason why people do that, because as in this mental illness, there always have the cause is a trauma they have lived when they were a little child, or even when they were in the womb sometimes. And I think the trauma for people, now going back from the analogy to the people, is the trauma that the people get, so that they never dare to touch, for example, things like 9/11, for example, let's say. I know we don't know what happened, but people, 99% of people usually go with the official version, And so, since what you get for going and trying to find out things, you get this, you get isolated, and you hate and everything, because the system is set up this way so that you don't touch certain things. They in their brain, it's like they shut down, just like the people with these problems, with these mental issues that I say to you. They usually shut out the trauma that they had during when they were little, and they put it in the unconscious mind. I don't know if the terminology is right, but it's something that they don't want to see anymore, that the trauma. And since they know that it's very hard for them to change the system, or this seems to them like this, but when in reality it isn't, because just look at how much money and energy these psychopaths spend to keep us in this way. So we are much more in number from them. But anyway, I wanted to add this point. In my opinion, people should, if it was possible, after they would be fooled and all these years, and they will fight with each other and everything, they should realize that the only two categories that we have in this planet, in my opinion, are you a prisoner, or are you the guard, the people out of the prison that control you? There is, we can say, for example, there are believers in God, and there are people that don't believe in anything, and the law of the strongest, and so they believe in that stuff, in evolution, in Darwinism, and all this stuff. And I mean, the people should start with this at the top, with these two categories, and then you can say, I'm Albanian, I'm this kind of sheep, that kind of race of sheep, But first of all, you are a sheep, and the sheep usually, if it's isolated from the group of other sheep, it ends up dead from the wolves that will eat it. So that's what they are doing with us. They isolate us with phones and culture and everything. Everybody talks only to the screen today. They don't talk to each other. It's hard for people to talk with each other because they are not used to it. Right. They have a relationship with screens today. Not long ago, people had a relation with real people, with a woman, for example, and today they have a relation of 2 or maybe 3 minutes with a porn star, for example, and that's the relation that they have today. So I don't know. Sometimes I have this rush of things I want to say and just explode like that. If all this gave you something to say, you can say, or I can go on to another thing.
Saint Augustine said that there were 2 possibilities in human history: the city of God and the city of man. The city of God is the people who love God to the extinction of self, and the city of man is people who love self to the extinction of God. That I think he was right. Those are the only 2 options in human history, and you have to choose to belong to one or the other of those cities. The program for the city of God is love and service to your fellow man. The city of man is the opposite. What is the opposite of love and service? It's control and domination, or as Augustine would put it, libido dominandi, the dominating lust. What we've had over the period of the last 200 years in Europe and the United States is the development of more and more sophisticated forms of political control. So communism was in many ways a crude form of political control, and it failed, and everybody was happy when it failed, but it was replaced by a much more sophisticated form of political control. And this is the control that gets inside you by telling you that if you become a slave of your passions, you're really being free. Well, they know that's not true, but that's what people believe, and that's what happened to Italy and Germany during this period of time. When you abandon the Catholic faith, there's only one other place to go. When you walk out of the city of God, there's only one other city you can go to, and that's the city of man. There's no third option here, and that's exactly what happened. And so the church predicted this in 1890. The Civiltà Cattolica, which is the official journal of the Catholic Church, published in Rome, said that any country that rebels against the Catholic principles, the principles established by Catholic kings, will end up being ruled by Jews. That is the fate of Europe right now. It is a continent that is ruled by Jews who use the control of information and things like pornography to enslave people to their passions. The result is demographic collapse. The result is weakness. And now they feel that immigration is going to finish off the last of their culture, and they're not happy. And the problem is that they will oftentimes, as we did in Philadelphia, blame the proxy warriors instead of the people the proxy warriors are working for. That's the problem. And what we need is consciousness across the board to allow people to understand who is really in charge and the plan they are using to enslave all of us. That's what we need to do.
Yes. And I think for many I'm hearing my voice gone. Let's wait that Google adjusts it. That's. I'm hearing my voice. Okay, now it's working. I was thinking the way they have destroyed the mind of the people today, that they are not capable of critical thinking or understanding, for example, that the monsters that they see in television, they should not laugh at them because they are fooling them, but they still enjoy watching these monsters, all fake and everything. And let me switch the camera, but Google doesn't want to do it. And so I was thinking that we are at a critical point. I mean, there is not much time left, in my opinion, because after with culture and television, they almost got the brain of all the people in their hand, and the last thing is what they're trying to do with technology today, that they are trying, for example, to use, for example, here in Italy, they will start with this 5G technology, which is very, very strong, and there are many reasons to worry about, using this technology to, who knows, we have gave them so much power to people at the top that they have technology to not only to destroy us psychologically, mentally, but also we can end up to not having a free, how do you call free will? Free freedom to act. Free will. It's called, yes, I think.
The guardian of freedom is morality.
Now, of course,
the first step you have to do if you want to be free is disconnect yourself from any type of immorality. And that means, for example, specifically something like pornography. Pornography is created by the oligarchs to create a nation of slaves. That's why it's there. That's why it's tolerated. No country in the world should tolerate pornography, but it's tolerated because it's a form of control. It's that simple. And so if anyone who's listening to us wants to be free, you have to break that habit. You have to get rid of that habit. That's the beginning of freedom. Morality is the beginning of freedom. And then after you've got some type of control over your own life, maybe you can start connecting with other people who are in the same situation and form an organization or a group of people who believe the same thing and will not submit to this form of tyranny. That's what's got to happen. It's got to start with the individual who's got to be able to break away from all of the tools of enslavement that this culture has created.
Yes, but it's like, you have someone with bad problems of health, for example, and you are telling them, or for example, one that smokes or is on drugs and does all unhealthy stuff. You want to help them, but it's hard to tell them, you should not eat the candies and all this stuff that is making you ill, but you should eat these fruits and vegetables. For at the beginning, this could not be seen very well by them. So what I'm saying is that with pornography, for example, they have destroyed the people in a way that it's unbelievable. For example, for me too, it was something that having been when I was little here in Italy, pornography was something so normal. You just switch on the TV and you see almost pornography today. But it was very late in my life that I had the power, and when I realized, for example, that it wasn't this was an attack on me and everything, and I imagine now how could people in this age, for example, get out of it, and even if when you get out of it, this stuff will always be in your mind, because it's like a trauma that you have, that they have put in your mind, and will never, people that have lived through this hell with this, all this pornography and everything, in this sick culture, all this stuff will be always in your mind, and with somehow will affect you for the rest of our lives. But I think if people have the will to understand how the brain works, and they want to heal people that have watched pornography, and this is only one aspect, pornography, but they have raped us with many things in the jobs, for example. The way, for example, I left my job 3 years ago because I saw that it was pure slavery. Even though they say it's all free today, but people are afraid to tell, for example, publicly what they go through in their jobs, because they would be ashamed, I think, to tell what they go through. But in where I was working, my colleague died because he went to the roof of the factory, and the roof collapsed, and he, with another guy, made the fly of 10 meters and broke his neck and died. But here in Italy, for example, die more than 1,000 people every year at work, because the pressure that they put on people, it's unbearable. And people, just to keep their job, because they must have the last model of the smartphone, the last model, because they are brainwashed. So the last model of car and everything, and because they tell them that as we said, that they should enjoy themselves, and so they die in their works. They are humiliated by their bosses in their work, doing all kinds of jobs that are really, when you think about it, they are completely useless, and that are poisoning the planet and everything. There's no, most of the people, I think, would not be proud to say publicly what they do in their jobs, or for what serves what they're doing in their jobs.
What you're talking about is the destruction of traditional Italian culture that Cardinal Ottaviani predicted in 1958, 1960. He saw it coming. The council was supposed to preserve Italy from that, and the council was hijacked. A long and complicated story that I've written about in books. Okay, we don't have time to go into that here. Because the council was hijacked, the church was unable. The church was weakened. The church was unable to protect traditional Italian culture. That is the role of the church, among other things, is to protect the culture, and it wasn't able to do that. The point I'm trying to make here is you need to make contact with these people. You're living there. You have to make contact with these people and explain to them what the situation is. It's not me. It's not Albanians that are destroying your culture. It's the United States or whatever. I mean, however you want to describe it. It's the oligarchs. It's the Jews. It's Jewish control of the media, but it's not Albanians. And the point here is that Albanians and Italians have some type of common interest when it comes to jobs and working on jobs where you're not going to die because of occupational hazards and roofs that collapse. There is an interest here. This is the type of thing that has to happen. You speak Italian, there's no reason you can't talk to people. The main problem here is that they've all accepted and internalized the commands of their oppressors. Now, if you can explain that to them, then you will be doing them a favor. But the point here is not to slip into this dialectic where suddenly they're letting the oligarchs choose who your enemies are.
Yes, I have tried. I have tried this, and the reason I thought to myself, "Hey, wait a minute, this is slavery," you know. And I left my job, and for 3 years I have done all that I could to explain this stuff to people. For example, the YouTube channel that I have tries to deal only with these issues, and I try to make videos in English, in Italian, of course. The main videos, most of these are in Italian, but the situation in Albanian also. But the situation is very, very sad, because people, although YouTube helps to censor me, of course, because I have 700 subscribers. When I put a video online, I get like 5 or 6 views. It's impossible, How come they are not fair in promoting all videos in the same way? But they promote, for example, videos in my channel where I talk about communism, since they want the dialectic, this fight people should have between left and right, and so for example, they promote videos where in the title, for some reason, there's the word sex, for example.
Yeah.
So they promote all this kind of videos, and so you see it. It's clear that with the logarithms and everything, they try or for example, in the main page of YouTube here in Italy, you see people playing video games, for example. You see stupid things like this, and never, for example, my videos, for example, are how to take all the people and see how we are fooled, and then try to make connection and do something. But the thing is that even though, so I was saying YouTube censors me, the problem is that people, even if they saw a few minutes, they stop the video because their brain is completely gone. The situation it's really bad, in my opinion. But of course I will never. In fact, I didn't want to say this because I know that I should be positive. Because being negative, it's useless. I mean,
you can't do this without God's help.
Yeah, in fact, I remember you said
the 2 options are the city of God and the city of man. And if you're a member of the city of God, you have to ask God for His help, because otherwise, it is hopeless. Without God, the situation is hopeless.
Yes. Hey, Dr. Jones, thank you very much for your time, and it was I hope that this other view of my experience here in Italy maybe gave to this 5% of people that still have the brain a way to decode, to decipher the world around us. Hopefully.
I hope so too. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Okay.
I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so just one last thing. If you want to go to your website, the website is culturewars.com.
Right.
Yes.
You have my email address. Send me the link, and I will post it on my YouTube channel.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.